Testing. Alright, we're looking at the Brl Cad shading objects presentation. This presentation was not given during the meeting, but serves as a useful reference for shaders, examples, and information. What is a shader? A shader is effectively a way to assign visual material properties with the geometry. They describe how something should look. Shaders apply shaders to the geometry. Shaders apply with a region. Default shaders are unified. Unspecified geometry is plastic font or Pong shader. Multiple shades may be specified with a stack shader. The quick example, the default of the shader is called plastic, which is a particular set of parameters for the Pong shader. There are more existing shaders. There are more than a few that are air, BRFDA, bump, the BW texture, camo, checker, cloud, cook, environmental map, fake star, FM, facial, buffet, and material, BM, bump, official buffet, color, fire flat, grass, gravel, grounds, light, marble, null, long, projection, arch, archery trains, ray tracing, trans, rans, S cloud, stack, DLC, TCL, texture, Toyota, turbo, turbo coupler, wood, etc. Now with some of the examples, following image is a collection of the variety of shaders, all stacked in the plastic shader. Each individual shader is then shown by the name, the close-up of the corresponding shader listed in the alphabetical order, and it shows a nice little picture here. Air shader example. Bidirectional reflection, distribution function. Bidirectional reflectional deflection distribution function. Simple isotropic Gaussian model with just one parameter. The root mean squared slope preset values of the bidirectional reflectional distribution function. Specular SP specular reflectance, diffuse reflectance, rough or RMS or rough surface roughness, transmit TR transparency, reflective model, MOS transmission, RI refraction index, and extinctional parameter extinction exists. Bidirectional reflectance distribution functional shader example. BU the bump maps shader example. Camouflage shader example. Checkered shader example. Cloud shader, two-dimensional Jeffrey Cardinal style cloud texture map name, cloud threshold, below the completed translucency range, intensities over the translucency varies from 0 to 1. Shows the cloud shader example. Cook tolerance director illumination shader, illumination the cook tolerance direction illumination surface light surface shading model, good for metal shining objects. Early attempts were made making this replacement of the Pong shader preset value of the cook. Specular SP specular reference, diffuse DI reflectance, transmittal transparency transmission, reflective the refractor index extinction EX, good metals and shiny objects, cook tolerance shader, the FBM shader existence, FBM color shader example, fire shader example, flat shader example, the blue sphere of the front, red sphere with a 50% tolerance. Grass shader example, grass shader example, gravel shader example, grunge shader example. Lights, Brl Cads are actually also special shader type that emits the spectrum of the energy. Other shaders use object shades with light shader with light source. Lights made visible or are easily invisible. You can see objects that illuminate. Show the combination editor, light, region, and color ID, air code, materials, shader, fraction, angle, target, region, inherit, shadow regions. Marble shader example. The null shader is the most simple shader that effectively makes the object disappear visually with the display while still returning segments with the ray tracer from their analysis. The good starting point with the writing new shaders. Install the default shader, use the default set with the parameters appear with a similar plastic. If the reference variety of the names to the access preset value, plastic, glass, and mirror. Diffuse specular plus specular is equal to 1.0. Fong plastic example, Fong glass example, Fong mirror example. Diffuse specular, diffuse components interface. Specular can increase from left to right, up and down, right and to the right. The projection shader example, RT trans shader example, S cloud shader example. The stack shader, the mechanism of combination of several of the shaders to get a more complex effect. The example image showing all stacked with the Pong shader using a default plastic value with exemption of flat shader example. The TCL shaders enable you with the TCL procedure of the shader, not a good idea with the performance matters, should only be considered acceptable, used only when the access source code is not possible. Texture shader example, TURBUMP shader example, TUR color, true color shader example, wood shader example, other information. All shaders are a source of distribution of the library optical. They are grouped according to the function and parameters of the shape, the sh underscore asterisk combination files. The library optical shade XX reference combo is for a combination for details on how to write new shaders from scratch. The lab optical shell shade null combination for a rather simple example of shader. And that was the end. This was your shading Objects Brl Cad.